I want to bring in now Lacey, whose husband works in a Maine county jail and actually brought COVID home to their family. Lacey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me so much.
Yeah. So when did your husband test positive for COVID?
So he tested positive. His test was on the 19th, and we got the results on August 20th, and that's when they sent him home from work. He had what he thought was allergy-like symptoms. When they first sent him home, he had called me to make sure that I didn't send our little one to daycare that day. And it was going from there, probably about day 3, 4, 5 into day 10 when he felt his worst.
Wow. And did anyone else in the family get sick, or was it just your husband?
No, I ended up getting sick too. My youngest and I went and got tested when we found out about my husband because I'm a community case manager, so I had community contact, and my youngest had been to daycare, so we wanted to help them make the best decisions going forward. And we were both negative the day after. And then about 7 days into my husband's isolation, I started to feel what I thought were allergies, but then a pretty intense migraine followed that. That didn't let up for several days. And it just kind of progressed from there. And I went and got tested again. And so pretty much he was coming out of isolation and I went into isolation.
Wow. And your child?
So my youngest child has asthma. Every winter since his birth, he'll be 5 this winter, we've ended up in walk-in care or even hospitalized due to his asthma. Even the common cold for him has brought upon breathing issues. We do nebulizers and such, but I am very happy to report that all 3 children were able to be away from us the best that we could, and none of them contracted it.
Oh. That's really, really good news. And how do you feel now?
I feel good. I feel really good physically. My husband was definitely sicker than I was. He had more symptoms than I did, including burning of the lungs and diarrhea and fever and low appetite. And so it took him a little bit more to bounce back. And I would say that he has for the most part, but he also then had to jump right back into going to work. So he's exhausted. So sometimes it's hard to tell, is that because, we're working a lot, or are we still having a lot of after effects from what we experienced?
You had to be worried about him going back to work.
They actually called him back the very morning of his day 11. And that was actually the very morning that I got my positive test. So he had communicated to them, not only was he still having fever, burning in his lungs, just fatigue. He just overall wasn't still feeling that great, and he informed them that I too was sick, but they still ordered him back.
Dr. Wissel, this is problematic. I mean, people don't want to think about prisons and jails, but what they don't realize, because it's not them. It's like, well, they're in a prison and jail. I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about what's happening in my community. But the thing about COVID is we're all one big community, because the way it spreads, it could be a visitor who goes in, who gets it from someone they're visiting, or even from a staffer, then they take it home, and then it spreads there. So it really is a situation where we all have to be concerned about how everyone is handling protocol and preventions when it comes to transmission.
Yeah, and I think in March and April, there was this new thing and wearing a mask, and we sort of got into it. And I think what we're seeing now is a lot of fatigue potentially about it. I mean, no one's going to say it's fun to wear a mask. It's really terrible to wear a mask. But we do it because we want to keep the community safe. And so now more than ever, we have to remember what's at stake and what we push through in March and April or July, depending on where your community's at. I like to say that, when you're buying food at the grocery store, someone who just got out of jail could be right before you or right behind you. It is about a community, and we are only as healthy as the sickest person in our community. And often the people who are the most vulnerable are in prison or jail.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Wissel, Corrine, and Lacey, thanks for joining us today and sharing your insight and stories. And we hope that everyone will be able to, stay safe while they're doing their job, not just the staff, but also the prisoners. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.